events. All right. Oh, here they come, people. Maybe we'll give it another minute or two and then get going.
Sounds good.
Okay. Thanks everyone for joining us this evening. All right, well, I'm excited to get going. So I bet others are too excited to hear your presentation. So I'll start. My name's Cynthia Walez, and I'm with Golden Eagle Audubon Society. I'm the executive director, and I'm really excited to be here. And I'm gonna just do a little quick thing and share my screen here. So let me start this little slideshow here. Yeah, welcome everyone. I'm sure a lot of you are very familiar with us, but I thought I'd throw our mission up there just to let you know. And so we've got some great field trips and events coming up. And this is just a little taste here, but thought I would entice you to get out there and enjoy the beautiful spring with our volunteers and learn what they can share with you and what you can share with everybody. So there's some walks and some volunteering you can do for restoration projects. And here's some workshops. Workshops are typically a little bit more in-depth things. So birding by ear and a nature writing workshop. These are all found on our website, and we ask you to register for them. So I did want to point out, though, a little save the date, if you would, August 2nd. We're going to have a 50th anniversary celebration. So it's going to be at the Idaho Botanical Garden, and we're working out the details now. So mark your calendars. It's for all members and guests. So we're looking forward to that. And again, yes, we find us online to learn more about our events and all the things that we do. And I just thought I'd let you know about the monthly programs. Will take a break in the summer. So this is our last one. And then we'll resume again in September. So I'm going to go ahead and introduce Dr. Chris Mcclure. He's born and raised in Columbus, Georgia, and he received a bachelor's degree from the University of Georgia, a PhD from Auburn University, and conducted postdoctoral research here at Boise State University. His research focuses on developing methods to better monitor, study, and manage birds. He has published nearly 70 scientific articles and is currently the Director of Global Conservation Science at the Peregrine Fund, where he oversees all of the research and monitoring conducted by the organization. If you have questions during the presentation, just go ahead and put them in the Q&A box down below or the chat bar, and I'll try to kind of organize them so he can get to them at the end. So with that, go ahead and take it away.
All right, let's share my screen. Share that, and then. All right, how's that look?
Looks great.
Okay, great. So today we're going to talk about the state of the world's raptors. We're going to answer 3 questions. We're going to ask why raptors, why are we interested in this particular group of birds? How are they doing? What's their conservation status around the globe? And then what's being done, particularly by the Peregrine Fund, the organization that I work for, to save raptors from extinction. To start off, there are 559 species of raptors on Earth. There's 236 owls, 234 hawks and eagles, 64 falcons. There are 16 accipitrid vultures. These are the vultures that live in Africa and Eurasia. 7 cathartid vultures. Those are the vultures we have here in North and South America. And then there are the 2 Seriamas. So those are our raptors. And the first question we're going to ask is why raptors? Why are we concerned with this group of birds? Well, one reason is that they act as sentinel species. And so a sentinel species is an animal or a plant or a species that warns us about a problem in the environment before we would otherwise realize that it's happening. And a good example here is DDT. So DDT was an insecticide. It was used mostly to kill mosquitoes and other pests. Post-World War II, and it was sprayed a lot, and it was thought to be harmless. And in fact, here you can see a photo of some young boys on a beach frolicking through the DDT mist. But we soon realized that DDT was causing eggshell thinning. It was especially in predatory birds, and it was causing the mother bird would sit to incubate the eggs. She would lay on the eggs and break them. The eggshells were so thin. This ruined many clutches of eggs, and it caused population declines in lots of predatory birds. And this is actually where the Peregrine Fund, the organization that I work for here in Boise, got its start. So Dr. Tom Cade was concerned that his favorite bird, the peregrine falcon, was declining because of this DDT problem. And he was a falconer, and so he knew these techniques of captive breeding, and he basically put them on an industrial scale. He was working out of Cornell at the time, back in the 1970s, when he founded the Peregrine Fund. We soon fledged and made it our way here to Boise. So he captively bred these birds and then released them out into the countryside. And partly because of Tom Cade, the peregrine falcon was removed from the endangered species list in 1999. Since then, the Peregrine Fund has had a hand in saving 8 different species of raptors from extinction. We currently work with 34 species in 27 different countries around the world, but we are based right here in Boise, Idaho. So some other reasons to care specifically about raptors is that they provide ecosystem services. These are services that are provided by the ecosystem that we, if the ecosystem wasn't providing them, we would have to come up with a way to get them themselves. Usually we would have to pay for them, someone to do them. And a good example, pest control. If you are not a fan of mice and rats, then you might be a fan of barn owls, American kestrels, or even New Zealand falcons. A great ecosystem service is carrion removal. And this is done primarily by vultures among raptors. A great example of this is the turkey vulture. It's been estimated that a turkey vulture will eat 1 pound of carrion per day. Now, this might not sound like much, but that's 183 pounds per year. And you can multiply that out by 13 million turkey vultures across North and South America. And so then we end up with over 100,000 tons of carrion that's dead, rotting flesh that is consumed or taken away by turkey vultures. And so you can imagine what a travesty it would be if suddenly we didn't have our vultures, if they weren't performing this ecosystem service for us. And this actually played out a couple decades ago across the Indian subcontinent. The vultures across India suddenly vanished, and no one knew why, and that was in a crisis we call the Indian or the Asian vulture crisis. So let's talk about that. Now, to understand the Indian vulture crisis, we have to realize that there's a lot of cows in India. There's about 500 million cows, and only 4% get consumed by humans. This is because of Hindu religious practices. So there's a lot of cows, and when they die, they don't get consumed. They actually go to what were referred to as carcass dumps. And these carcass dumps are great places for vultures. So the vultures would come. This is a picture of one. The vultures would come and eat the carcasses. It was great for the vultures. This is a picture of white rumped vultures, and they were considered the most abundant raptors in the world during the 80s. There was about 80 million of them. And in this picture, if you look at the back, the buildings, there are vultures lining the buildings and even the water tower back in the far background. So the white rumped vulture was the most abundant raptor on the planet. But then something happened. So in 1984, an ornithologist named Vibhu Prakash was counted the number of vulture pairs, this is white rumped vultures, in Kaladeo National Park in India. And he counted about 350 pairs. He came back in 1996, and the population had been cut in half. He found dead vultures hanging from the trees and did not know why. He then came back in 1999, and the population had completely collapsed. There were no more vultures left in this national park, in this vulture colony. So Dr. Prakash rang the bell. He sounded the alarm, and he got other ornithologists to go out and monitor other colonies and figure out if this collapse was happening elsewhere. And it turns out that it was. In fact, between 1992 and 2000, 3 species of vultures across the Indian subcontinent declined by 96 to 99%. They had almost gone totally extinct across India. Now remember, there's a lot of cows in India. And if the vultures aren't eating those cows, something is going to, and that something turned out to be feral dogs. The feral dog population skyrocketed in concert with the vulture population declining. In fact, it was concurrent with an increase of 38 million dog bites on people, which was concurrent with 47,000 human deaths from rabies, and it cost the Indian government $34 billion because now the Indian government has to not only get rid of those carcasses, but control the feral dogs and treat all those people that had rabies. And no one knew the cause of this decline. It was a complete mystery until it was actually scientists at the Peregrine Fund figured out that it was a veterinary drug called diclofenac. This is a non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drug that was being given to the cows across India. Now remember, no one's eating these cows, so the cows are dying of old age, and they're getting old age aches and pains. And so people were giving them this anti-inflammatory drug to help ease their suffering. And so the cows would then die with this drug in their system, and the vultures would then eat the cows, and this drug is very toxic to vultures. And so the vultures would die of renal or kidney failure because they were eating this diclofenac. So the Peregrine Fund called a summit for the governments of India and Pakistan to get together in Nepal. And you can imagine how tough it was to get these two geopolitical rivals together. But somehow they did it. They got together in Nepal in 2004, and they banned diclofenac. They agreed to ban diclofenac, the veterinary use of diclofenac, in 2006. And since then, the population has come back a little bit. It hasn't come back much. This bird, the white rumped vulture, is still critically endangered. It takes a long time for such a big, long-lived, slowly reproducing raptor to bounce back from such a drastic decline. And so the population has come back a little bit, but it is still critically endangered. But we learned a lot from the Indian vulture crisis. And one of the things that we learned was that raptors, particularly vultures and scavengers, are critical to ecosystem and to human health because of that ecosystem service that they provide. So that's why raptors. Next, we're going to talk about how are they doing? What's their conservation status around the globe? And to do that, we go to the state of the world's raptors. This is a project that I led a few years ago with many different co-authors, many different scientists, and from different organizations around the globe. Now, to examine the state of the world's raptors, we turn to the IUCN Red List. The IUCN is the International Union for the Conservation of Nature, and they run the Red List. This is an inventory of the global status of biological species across the world. They're done with assessments by experts. So experts sit around, they sit around a table, and they talk about the population status of a given species and whether or not it is threatened or declining. And there's a wealth of information within these assessments. Probably the most important thing is the conservation status of a species. And this can range from anywhere from critically endangered, which means that the species is very likely to go extinct in the near future, to least concern, meaning that the species is not likely to go extinct anytime soon. A good example of a critically endangered species is our white rumped vulture that we were just talking about. And then a least concerned species is our own American Kestrel, which we have here in Idaho. It is the breeding season right now. This is a very abundant species, is one of the most abundant raptors in the continent. Even though it is in decline, it is not declining fast enough to put the bird at any risk of extinction in the near future. Now, for a species if a species is listed as critically endangered, endangered, or vulnerable, it is considered to be threatened with extinction. From the IUCN Red List, we also get population trends. So whether a population is declining, increasing, or stable. You can get its habitat needs, and these are broad categories like a grassland or a forest. They list the threats to the species. These can be things like wildfire or getting killed by wind turbines. And it also gives the range maps for a species. This is where a species occurs on the globe. If you've ever looked through a bird guide, you know what a range map is. And then it lists the conservation needs for a given species to make it so that the species is no longer threatened. And this could be something like a captive breeding and reintroduction program, or a banning a pesticide or diclofenac or anything like that. So some results. This is looking at all birds, not just raptors. And at the top, you see the percentage that are threatened in red there on top. That's the bottom bar. The bottom part of the bar is the percentage threatened. And then at the bottom part of the graph, the bottom bar of that part is the percentage that is declining. And so that's all birds, and we can compare that to all raptors. So that's 18% of raptors are threatened with extinction, and 52%, that's over half of all raptors, have declining global populations. So your average raptor is more likely to be threatened and declining than your average bird is. And remember, to be listed as threatened with extinction, a species has to be either critically endangered, endangered, or vulnerable. But 38% of the least concerned species are in decline. So that means that over a third, 38% of the species that we're supposed to be able to have the least concern with, those species, 38% of those birds are in decline. So even of the least concerned species, we still have to be concerned with. Moving on, we've got owls, hawks and eagles, falcons, the cathardid vultures, accipitrid vultures. So 69% of accipitrid vultures are threatened with extinction, and 81% of the accipitrid vultures are in decline. Now, we've already talked about the Indian vulture crisis, but you might be surprised to learn that there is a concurrent African vulture crisis going on. So this is a study that my good friend and colleague Darcy Ogata led. She works for the Peregrine Fund, and she showed that these species, the African vultures, were in trouble, and she lists some reasons for that. Now, I have a warning here. There are some gruesome photos coming up, so feel free to turn away. One of the reasons that that vultures are in trouble across Africa is that pastoralists will retaliate against lion, leopard, and hyena predation on their livestock. And so what we're looking at here is called a boma. It is a livestock enclosure, and the predators, the mammalian predators, will get into these bomas and kill the livestock. The farmers then retaliate against the livestock by poisoning one of the carcasses, and then either the vultures will come in and feed on that poisoned carcass, or the lion, in this instance, will go off and die, and the vultures will feed on that lion and die. Another way that vultures get poisoned is a much more insidious form, is that vultures will poison the carcasses of rhinos and elephants to hide their crimes. The authorities will actually look for vultures circling overhead to see where poached animal carcasses are to find the crime scene, basically. And so vultures will poison the carcasses. Poachers will poison carcasses of their victims so that they will poison the vultures and keep them from circling overhead and alerting the authorities to the scene of the crime. Another way that vultures are being poisoned is that they are being used in black magic. They're being used in superstitious rituals, and they are being consumed by people. This is going on, especially in West Africa. People will consume vulture heads because they think it gives them clairvoyance, and so they'll consume a vulture head before, say, betting on a soccer game. And so this is one of the ways that vultures are being poisoned across Africa. So that's vultures, but lots of raptors are in decline. What are the threats that raptors are facing? Well, the number one threat to the most species is agriculture, followed by logging. And this is habitat destruction happening. So habitat destruction is the number one threat to raptors, followed by hunting. And this is where we kind of realize that these categories aren't great for raptors, but they're the ones that IUCN gives us. They're the ones that we have to work with. So hunting includes the predator poisoning and use in black magic. Moving on, we've got invasive species. We've got energy. Energy includes wind power. Pollution includes DDT and diclofenac. Then service corridors includes electrocution and power lines, and road kills, vehicle collisions. Rounding it out, we've got disturbance, fire, and fishing. Now that's for all raptors. What if we just focus on the active pictured vultures? Then we see that the hunting and pollution pop out as the big threats, and that's basically all the poisoning that we've just mentioned, between diclofenac, between the black magic poisoning, the sentinel poisoning, and the predator poisoning. Now, if habitat destruction is the #1 threat to raptors across the globe, what is this habitat that's being destroyed? It is forest. Remember, IUCN lists the red list lists the habitat types that the raptor species need, and by far the most listed habitat type is forest. It is 8 times more listed than the next most listed habitat type, which is grassland. So this is forest being felled for agriculture and logging that is threatening raptors around the globe. Now remember, the IUCN Red List also gives the range maps for these species, so we can map out where they occur across the globe. This map shows the species richness of raptors in the ecoregions of the Earth, and the highest richness, the highest number of species, the highest diversity that we see are shown in red, and that's in the neotropics, in sub-Saharan Africa, and then a little bit in Southeast Asia. But we can also look at where the threatened raptors occur. And so if you look at the threatened raptors, you see that Africa pops out and India pops out. And a big reason for that is the Asian or the Indian and the African vulture crises. You'll notice there's only one species of threatened raptor in North America, and that is our California condor. And then finally, we can look at the declining raptors. And now, not only does Africa and India pop out, and Southeast Asia pop out, but so does South America. And so the fact that South America doesn't have that many threatened species, but it's got a lot of declining species, that tells us that that we need to pay a lot of attention to South America, because it will soon, if those species keep declining, that's raptors telling us, that's them fulfilling their sentinel role as sentinel species, telling us something is wrong in South America and that we need to fix it before those species become threatened or even extinct. Okay, so we know there's a problem with the world raptors. What needs to happen for them to be saved? IUCN lists the priorities for action for all of these species. And so land and water protection, education and awareness, and land and water management are the top 3 things listed by IUCN. And land and water protection and management are basically in response to the habitat destruction that's going on. It's protecting the land that is being, and the habitat that's being destroyed. And then education and awareness speaks right to the poisoning that is happening for the vultures in Southeast Asia and in Africa. Rounding that out, we've got law and policy, species management, and economic incentives. We published this in, it was 2018, that was several years ago now. But it was, we had a good response to it, and people are really taking it to heart. Okay, so that's how raptors are doing. That's the state of the world's raptors. Now, what's being done, particularly by the Peregrine Fund, to save their populations, to keep them from declining, and to save them from extinction? Well, we have sort of a roadmap from the state of the world's raptors. We've got the priorities for action, and from these priorities, we took that we need to address deforestation. We need to assuage the landscape level threats that the raptors are facing, like poisoning, and we, above all, we need to prevent extinctions. We need to keep these birds from going extinct. So let's talk about addressing deforestation. How are we doing that? We are working in forests. And one of them that we are working in is Darien National Park in Panama. And this is an incredible place. It is right there where Panama meets Colombia. It's right there on the border, and it's just a little park, but it is incredibly diverse because it is right where North and South America meet, and so it's got all those flora and fauna mixing right there. It is home to over 8,000 species of plants, 170 mammals, 540 birds, and 53 species of raptors. Now that might not sound like too many raptors, but that is the same number of raptors as the continental United States has. So just in this tiny little park, we've got just as many raptors, species of raptors, as the entire continental United States. So that's a lot packed in to this park. And it is a hotspot of deforestation. Here we're looking at an animation of the creeping deforestation across Darien province in Panama. And that is the red, as you can see, as time ticks by, more and more red creeps up into that figure there, and that is deforestation that we are trying to stop. And the way to do this is by working with indigenous communities. They control a lot of the land. They are incredible people to work with, and they are helping to save their own forests. One of the ways that we are helping them is to help secure land title for indigenous communities. It turns out that the land title situation down there is tough. Oftentimes there will be several people with a sheet of paper saying that they have rights to a single piece of land. Several people will have a claim to the land. And in reality, control of the land goes to the first person who gets there, cuts down the forest, and starts grazing cattle on it. So we're trying to prevent that. And we give environmental talks in the native villages, particularly in La Maria and Samaco. And we are helping them to grow shade-grown coffee. I know Golden Eagle Audubon Society is big into shade-grown coffee, and that's great. This is where so normally when folks are growing coffee, they will cut down the entire forest and just plant coffee. But in shade-grown coffee, they leave the overstory for the birds, and they grow the coffee underneath in the understory. And so it's a good way to have bird-friendly coffee. So we are helping them to helping the native peoples to grow shade-grown coffee. And we're also working with the environmental ministry down there. That is, we've signed a cooperative agreement with their environmental ministry called Mi Ambiente. And so we are working both bottom up and top down to affect change in Darien National Park. And so hopefully we can make a better place for people and species like the harpy eagle that lives in Darien National Park. So that's how that's one of the ways we're addressing deforestation. We're also trying to assuage threats to raptors. And one of the threats, of course, that I've been talking about is poisoning in both Africa and Southeast Asia. So in Kenya, we have developed poisoning rapid response teams, and there's actually a poisoning hotline. So if someone comes across a site of poisoning event, they will call the hotline, and our folks are first on the scene. And importantly, they will protect forensic evidence. They collect the evidence so that we can bring up charges. And most importantly, they clean up the site. We don't want that poison carcass out there poisoning more and more and more vultures. We clean that site up. We also work with wind power right here in the USA. Wind power is, it's important to have green energy, but we want it to be bird friendly. And wind power, wind turbines can be especially bad for raptors because, like I mentioned, they're very slowly reproducing species. And so if adults are getting killed by wind turbines, it can have devastating effects on the populations. Now, in America, in the U.S., the bald and golden eagle, bald and golden eagles are protected by the Bald and Golden Eagle Protection Act, and so wind farms are under special pressure by the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service to protect these two species of eagles. In fact, some wind power facilities have implemented something called informed curtailment. This is where, in most cases, people will sit there in a tower amongst the wind turbines, and they will scan the skies for eagles coming. And they will literally radio down to the control room and say, shut down this turbine if an eagle is determined to be at risk of collision. This is usually people, this is humans determining whether or not an eagle is at risk. And it usually takes about 20 seconds to shut down a given wind turbine. So this can't save eagles from collision. We were given a grant to test a newfangled machine that, instead of people doing the scanning of the skies, it would actually be a series of camera units called Identiflight units. And so the way that this works is there are 8 wide view cameras that are constantly looking up at the sky. And if they see any movement, and they're trying to detect flying objects, and if they see any movement, then a stereo camera, which is basically on a turret or a pan and tilt unit, will turn and look at whatever the wide view camera saw. And it judges the distance, so it's double barreled, so it can judge the distance, and it uses machine learning and artificial intelligence to determine whether it is an eagle. These are actual pictures taken by the machine, or not an eagle. Again, actual pictures. And so we were given a grant to conduct a study, and we pitted humans versus the machines. And in our study, this was conducted in Wyoming, at a wind farm in Wyoming. The humans detected 1,224 birds. And I thought, that's amazing. That's a lot of birds. These observers are really good at detecting birds. But the machine detected 7,182 birds. So this is many times over what the humans detected. These machines are good at spotting those birds. So we published these results, and the wind farm that we were working at was blown away. They went all in on Identiflight. And so this is a map of where that wind farm is. It's called Top of the World in Wyoming. And if we zoom in, you can see Top of the World, where the Identiflight units are installed, is in the bottom right of that map. So there you can see in orange, those are the wind turbines, and interspersed throughout all of that area are the Identiflight units. So there are cameras where all of those black dots are. Now, if you look in the top right, or top left, sorry, you will see another wind power facility, and that one's called Campbell Hill. And you'll notice that there are wind turbines, but there are no Identiflight units. So what we have is this great experimental setup where one of the wind farms receives Identiflight units and is actively shutting down wind turbines, and the other wind farm is not shutting down wind turbines. It doesn't have Identiflight units. And luckily, the folks running these 2 wind farms were collecting data on how many eagles were getting killed throughout the entire period, both before and after the Identiflight units were installed at Top of the World. So we have a before-after control impact study that we can run, and we can tell whether or not the number of eagles killed at Top of the World declined relative to the control site after Identiflight units were installed. And this is only 15 kilometers away. So what we have is a pretty good control versus treatment site. So this is the fatality rate at the control site before Identiflight was installed at the treatment site. And it's about 2-point-something eagles per year. Then afterwards, the number of eagles killed after Identiflight was installed actually went up at the control site. We think they went up because eagle abundance actually went up. But if we compare the number of birds killed at the treatment site. So the treatment site was actually deadlier than the control site before Identiflight was installed. So this is before the machine started shutting down the wind turbines. But afterwards, it actually became safer than the control site. And this translates to about an 85% decline in the number of birds killed, the number of eagles killed per year. It's an 85% difference relative to the control site. So we published this, and it's gotten some attention of the wind power industry. They are now installing Identiflight units at several places around the world. And I should say that our results only apply to this one place, top of the world wind power facility compared to a nearby control site, but the results do seem promising for Identiflight. It'll take more study to see if it actually works for more species in more places around the world. Now, finally, we want to prevent extinctions. One of the ways that you can prevent an extinction is to rediscover a species. And this is a great thing that the Peregrine Fund does. And my good friend and colleague, Russell Thorstrom, is amazing at it. That's a picture of him holding the first live Madagascar red owl to ever have been seen since it was declared extinct a few years before that. He has also rediscovered the Madagascar serpent eagle, and another Peregrine Fund biologist rediscovered the Madagascar pochard just a few months after it had been declared extinct also. So this is the Peregrine Fund rediscovering species. Russell really is, he's got a knack for this, and we are actually going to send him down to Brazil to rediscover the Pernambuco pygmy owl that was recently declared as possibly extinct. And we want to send him to Cuba also to rediscover the Cuban kite that hasn't been seen for years. And I think the smart money is on Russell finding these birds. We also worked with the critically endangered California condor. So this species is critically endangered, but it's an amazing bird. It's got a 9.5-foot wingspan. It's a vulture. In 1982, there were only 22 of these species left. But they were brought into captivity for captive breeding. And actually, because of the Peregrine Fund's success in captive breeding, the Fish and Wildlife Service asked if we would help out. And so we helped with that program. We have a release site in the Grand Canyon, and there are now over 500 California condors in existence, and about half of those exist in the wild. So this is we went from only 22 left on Earth to over 500 now in existence. So that's a real success story. And up at the World Center for Birds of Prey, which is here in Boise, we have the largest captive breeding flock of California condors. There are 15 pairs, and they put out about 12 young per year. We also work with the critically endangered Ridgeways hawk. And so this species exists mainly within Los Atices National Park in the Dominican Republic on the island of Hispaniola. There, it's lived on mine. And it was predicted to go extinct by 2031. And one of the reasons it was predicted to go extinct is a parasitic nest fly, or a bot fly, called Phylornis pisci. And the sort of circle of life for this species is we start off with an adult fly. That adult fly lays eggs on a nestling of a bird, in this case, a Ridgway's hawk. Those eggs then hatch into larvae and feed on the blood and the tissue of that nestling. The larvae then drop from the nestling when they are big enough and old enough, and they drop into the nest and pupate. and then the pupae hatch into adult flies. And so we have the circle of life for this fly. But it is this stage right there where the eggs hatch into larvae that feed on the blood and the tissue that is absolutely devastating for these populations. The nestlings get literally eaten alive by maggots, and it's got to be painful, and it's got to be a terrible way to die. So again, gruesome picture warning. It does a number on these nestlings, and so we realized that we needed a way to manage this parasite, and it was actually Thomas and Christine Hayes. They live right here in Boise. They did their work in the Dominican Republic. They realized that fipronil, which is the fancy term for Frontline flea spray, which you might use on your cat or your dog, they got this awesome idea that maybe, just maybe, if we spray that on the nestlings, that it would control the botfly infestation. Now, we realized that we couldn't just go with our gut. We couldn't throw all of our eggs into this basket, so to speak, if without some actual hard evidence of it working. So we were a science-based organization. We needed to do some science and make sure that it worked. So we did an experiment. We had 64 treatment nests where we climbed up, and this, I say we, it was Thomas and Christine and their very intrepid crew, climbed up into the nests and sprayed those nests with the flea spray. And then there were 42 control nests where we didn't do anything. We just watched and saw it happen. And it turns out that the number of nest flies on the nestlings plummeted in the treated group. And so it was an 88% drop from the treatment group. And then the number of offspring that fledged from the nests more than doubled. It went up by 179%. And so this is a huge effect on the productivity of the population. And so remember, this bird was predicted to go extinct by 2031. And now the population is increasing. It is no longer predicted to go extinct. And it's all because Thomas and Christine had this amazing idea. So no longer predicted to go extinct. Another great example is the Puerto Rican sharp-shinned hawk. It is a species of an accipiter species that is native only to Puerto Rico. And in 2017, it was actually Russell, my good friend Russell, and his crew counted that there were about 75 Puerto Rican sharp-shinned hawks in existence. Now that sounds like not very many to me, but then Hurricane Maria, you probably remember this. In 2017, Hurricane Maria came through and absolutely devastated Puerto Rico. There was a very big human toll that was levied across the island, but there was also it devastated the population of Puerto Rican sharp-shinned hawks, and it leveled the forest that the species needs. And so the population fell to only 19 individuals in existence, or at least that we can find in 2018. Now, we have some, we realized that we needed to do something about this, so the Peregrine Fund leapt into action. The Peregrine Fund has many tools up its sleeve. We realized that this species also gets hit by botflies. It gets parasitized by those nest flies. And if the nests go untreated, they fledge about one nestling per attempt. And if we treat the nest, then the pairs, those nesting pairs, can fledge about 2 young per nest. But we have another trick up our sleeve, and it's called double clutching. Now, I'm not talking about driving a car. I'm talking about clutches of eggs. The way that this works is we find a nest, we actually take the eggs. Now, these species, most raptor species, will do something called double clutching, where if they lose a clutch of eggs early on in the process of nesting, they will relay eggs. So we take our eggs and we hatch those eggs, and then we can raise and release hawks on our own. But there will be an empty nest. That empty nest will then have eggs laid within them because the raptors will double clutch, they will re-nest, and then they will raise more hawks. So by double clutching these birds, we can hatch birds out ourselves, and the hawks will hatch their own birds and raise those. So we can basically double the productivity of any nest using double clutching. And so that's what we see. So we've got this system where the untreated nests only fledge one young per attempt. The treated nests, where we just do the flea spray, fledge 2 young per attempt, and then the double clutch nests fledge 3 young per attempt. Now, double clutching is a lot of work. We have to take those eggs, we have to raise them, we have to incubate them, we have to feed them, we've got to release them, and we still got to feed them once we've released them because they can't hunt on their own yet. And so it's a lot of work to double clutch. Whereas treating the nest for the bot flies, all you got to do is climb up into the nest and spray that flea spray, and it works. So we've got this balance. Double clutching is more effective, but it's a lot more work. So we can't manage as many nests that way. But we can manage a lot more nests if we treat the nests with the flea spray, but it won't be as effective. So what we have is a sort of a trade-off. Now, if this sounds like a math problem that you probably had in high school, it is. So double clutching is more effective, but you can manage fewer nests. Treatment is less effective, but you can manage more nests. And so this is a math problem. So how many nests do we need to treat to justify not double clutching? We turn to high school math. I know this looks like a fairly complicated equation, and it sure felt complicated while I was putting it together. But this basically shows the trade-off between double clutching and treatment of a nest. And so we ran simulations. We put this through the ringer to see where that break-even point is, how many nests we have to treat to justify switching from double clutching to a treatment regime. And so we did a bunch of fancy computer simulations. I did 3D simulations, but in the end, it was really just high school math that got us through. So if there are any high schoolers out there thinking, why do I have to take this algebra? I'll never use this someday. Well, maybe someday you'll use it to save an endangered species from extinction. So it turns out that the break-even point is a simple number. It is 8 nests. As long as we can treat 8 nests, then we have justified switching from double clutching over to treatment. So that was in 2018. There were very few birds left, but across the island of Puerto Rico, the population seemed to be on the increase. And so this is partially because of that flea spray that Thomas and Christine realized would be so great. So just to wrap this up, the Peregrine Fund does raptor conservation around the world. That's in 34 species, 27 different countries. We rediscover species, we prevent extinctions, and we save even common species from being killed by from landscape level threats like wind power. But in the end, we go back to our roots, I guess. It's as simple as high school algebra being used and frontline flea spray being used to save these birds. And with that, I've got a lot of folks to thank, a lot of funders, all of the illustrations that you saw today, or at least most of them, were done by my good friend Bryce Robinson, who is a graduate student at Cornell Lab of Ornithology, and his website is Ornithology. That's Ornithology with an I, not a Y. So go check him out. And with that, I am done. I hopefully have time for questions.
Oh yeah, I think so. That was really fascinating. Thank you so much. I learned so much.
Glad to hear it.
Yeah. When you started talking about the aerial detection, that raised some questions
I
there.
bet it did, yeah, it usually does.
This one you probably answered. Is Identiflight installed in other wind farms now?
A few, but not very many. There's one in California, and one in Australia, and one in Germany that I know of. But they are they're putting them up all over. Well, not all over the place, but there are more going up.
Well, good. Yeah, clearly you've made an excellent case as to why they should. So, are the turbines shut down for all raptor species or just eagles?
I wish they were shut down for all raptor species, but the eagles are protected by the Bald and Golden Eagle Protection Acts, and so they get their own special protection, and so it is it's only supposed to be shut down for eagles, but sometimes the machine mistakes a turkey vulture for an eagle, and if you ask me, that's just fine. I'm fine with them saving some turkey vultures.
All right. Yeah, and this Russell seems to be quite valuable. We need quite a few of him, right? So Louisa said maybe the Peregrine Fund should send that guy to Louisiana to discover the ivory-billed woodpecker.
That's funny you mentioned that. The forest in Cuba that he is going down to look for the Cuban kite is actually the last place that anyone, the last verified sighting of an ivory-billed woodpecker. So who knows? Maybe he could find a couple, rediscover a few species down there.
Maybe, and I'll just go down the list here. Howell bird flu. Oops, I just moved it. We're getting lots of questions. How will bird flu affect populations?
It can only be detrimental, and I've seen there are reports of a bunch of I think black vultures dying somewhere, and we're pretty worried about it up at the World Center for Birds of Prey. We certainly don't want our captive birds getting it, so we are taking lots of precautions to keep our birds from getting it. So it's bird flu will not be good for raptor populations.
Right. You got lots of thanks so much for your good work, Dr. Chris, from Harriet and Denise, and super interesting and great presentation from Patty. Fabulous work, much gratitude from Cynthia, but not me, but somebody else. Thanks so much, very illuminating. I agree with that, Hannah. Does lead ammunition contribute to raptor deaths as well?
Absolutely. It contributes to a lot of raptor deaths, and it is, thank you for asking, because it's basically the thing preventing a major comeback of the California condor. The California condor populations are limited by lead poisoning from spent ammunition. And so a recent study came out actually from a good friend, Todd Katzner, from his lab here in Boise. And it showed that I think it was golden eagles, it was like half of golden eagles have lead poisoning, or at least of the birds that they tested. And they showed that it is limiting the population. So lead poisoning is affecting scavenging birds across the U.S.
On that note, I had a question. I have a friend that does a lot of research on big cats, and you had that picture of the cougar. And do you see that poisoning on the increase, or is it on the decrease?
We think, we preliminary data suggest that we see it on the decrease because of all of the great effort that my friends over in Africa are doing to decrease that poisoning. There's lots of education, lots of law enforcement going on that is being done by the Peregrine Fund and lots of other folks in Kenya and in other places to prevent poisoning of raptors.
Great, that's good news. Cynthia says, say howdy to Chris Parrish for me.
Okay, will do.
And Amanda says, thank you so much for a great presentation. Let's see, Nick, thank you. Will Frontline have to be applied annually in order to save the Ridgeways hawk?
Yes.
You,
Yep. It's every year. Every nest gets sprayed with, well, not every nest, a large proportion. If we want to save the birds from the botflies, it has to be sprayed every year. Yeah.
And he says, do you expect to increase the population to a point where the living fledglings versus deaths to botfly reaches some equilibrium?
We do want an equilibrium. We can't, we don't want to treat these birds forever. We don't want to have to spray these nests into perpetuity. So one of the other things that we're doing, I just didn't have time to talk about this. We're doing education down there. The folks down there will shoot Ridgway's hawks because the hawks will hunt chicks, like young chickens. And so we're educating folks to please not do that. And we're actually giving them chicken coops. So you can keep the young chicks in a chicken coop, and it protects them from Ridgway's hawks. Once the chicks are big enough, you let them out and the hawks won't bother them. And so we give out these chicken coops, and so that will raise survival enough that having a low reproductive rate will be okay, because the birds will live long enough and have enough chances of breeding that eventually they'll be able to replace themselves.
Great, so many tools. Cynthia, during the summer of 2020, we lost numerous raptors from avian chlamydia at Oregon Pipe Cactus National Monument. On a broader scale, is this a continued threat and concern?
I haven't heard of it being a concern for any of the populations that we're working with. And so I don't know. I might have to plead ignorance on this one.
Well, that's okay. Crystal, excellent work. So interesting and amazing about the difference the Peregrine Fund work does. Yes. Let me go over to the Q&A tab here. What is the population status for golden eagles in the US and worldwide?
They are least concern worldwide, and they are doing pretty well here in North America, even despite the lead poisoning. So many raptors, the US is actually a pretty good place for raptors right now, especially because many populations are still rebounding from the DDT era. So raptors are actually, despite the lead poisoning and despite species like California condor and spotted owls that we hear a lot about, most raptors in the US are doing pretty darn well.
Great. And Kathleen, I saw you had your hand up earlier, so thanks for just writing that down for us. Someone told me today not to feed the birds in my yard due to the bird flu because feeders cause the birds to gather too closely. Is that true?
I've heard that. I'm not an expert on transmission among past songbirds. But I would say do whatever Idaho Fish and Game says to do, or wherever you are, wherever your local state wildlife agency, whatever they say to do. I'd say, give them a Google, see what they are instructing you to do with your bird feeders.
And I feel like I should be able to answer that eloquently, but I don't want to say the wrong thing. So I do believe on our website there's some information, and if there's not, then I'll get it there in the next day or so. So thank you for the question. Let's see. Looks like we picked up another one. Besides switching from lead bullets, what else can we do to help condors and vultures? Good one.
Oh gosh. Well, the snide answer would be become a member of the Peregrine Fund. Education goes a long way. Come visit the World Center for Birds of Prey. We'd love to have you up on the hill. But in all honesty, give to organizations that are affecting change. It doesn't have to be the Peregrine Fund. There's a lot of great organizations out there. Give to organizations that share a belief in science and a passion for the natural world.
Are bot flies causing any problems to birds in the U.S.?
I think so. Well, it depends on if you're counting Puerto Rico, Puerto Rico is a U.S. territory, and so they are in Puerto Rico, and they are. I don't think they're affecting any other populations in the U.S., but maybe don't quote me on that
one. All right. I see, I just got a flash on my screen that somebody else raised their hand, so I don't know. Now I'm not seeing it, so if you don't mind, if you had a question to write it in the chat, then that would help us out here. Cindy asks, are there efforts to get the Identiflight added to any Idaho wind farms?
I haven't heard of any. But I would say some more testing is needed before we go all out on Identiflight. I'm not endorsing them, but our study was sure promising, and so if a few more promising studies come out, I'd say it's time to go in on it.
Okay. Well, it seems like that. Got no more questions that I can see, so we'll just stall for a second if someone's typing, but yeah, well, thank you so much. That was
no problem.
Yeah, super interesting, as everyone has been saying, and very illuminating. I like that term. It was amazing. Yes, thank you.
Great. Well, thanks for having me.
Oh, you're welcome. You're very welcome. Yeah, hope to see you again soon.
All right. Sounds good.
All right. All right. Thanks, everyone, for joining us. Really appreciate it. Keep up the good work.
Thank you.